Good evening, friends and candidates now. Congratulations for clearing the mains. And now you have to get ready for the filling your DAF 2 and taking your interview with the UPSC panel. So filling up the DAF 2 form is basically different from DAF 1 only in three respects. The first is that you have to include now hobbies and interests. Number two, you have to give the choice of your services, 1, 2, 3, IAS, IFS, IPS, IRS, etc., etc. And the third is choice of region. In case you qualify for All India services, then you have to give the choice for All India services being IAS and IPS and Indian Forest Service, but we don't have any. This is a panel for not for Forest Service. So these are the three major changes which you have to now take care of while filling up your DAF2, and this has to be done quickly. I think they have given the last date also. So this is to advise you now on how to fill up the forms. Now we have with us, I am Subhash Mathur, ex-IRS 71. We have with us Veteran Wing Commander Baljit Saluwalia. After his retirement, he is an expert in leadership and personality development, and he will also guide you about hobbies and interests. Then we have with us Santosh sir. Santosh Pandey is well known to all of you. So most of you have been his students. So therefore, I need not go too deep into what Santosh is doing. But what I can say is Santosh is doing a good job. And he is really taking care of the needs of the aspirants and then later on candidates to qualify for the civil services. And as most of you know, at least 30 aspirants which have received training with us in Santosh sir's classes, then my ethics class, and then interviews, have now qualified to be a part of this elite civil service. And all of you are now on your way to become part of the elite civil service. So without much ado, I'll ask Baljit. Baljit sir, would you like to speak a few lines on hobbies and interests?
Sure, so thank you. I'll take away from here. First of all, many congratulations to all the candidates who are on this session right now. I'm sure the hard work that you put in all these months have paid off, and you're on the threshold of becoming a civil servant. Being a civil servant is a dream for many. And remember that you have passed the threshold level and are just to cross one more step into the civil services stream. From now onwards, whatever steps you take, whatever initiatives you take in filling up the form, whatever preparations that you do for your final interview will pay you in good stead. What I will just focus on, as Subhash rightly said, is how do you position your hobbies and extracurricular activities? This is going to be a very important step that you're going to take, because believe you me, guys, the panel focuses on this aspect very much. Besides understanding your knowledge about current affairs, besides knowing about your region, besides knowing about yourself, your performance, your grades so far, they take an ample amount of time to find out how much this candidate has invested his time in his hobbies and extracurricular activities. Therefore, it becomes imperative that you spend some time before filling up the DF2 to really understand how do you write and position your hobbies in the right perspective. And why we're laying so much of emphasis on this is simply because of the fact that whatever you spell out in your form right now, the panel is going to take on from there and drill you with many questions and clarifications about the hobbies that you have. So first and foremost, guys, remember that you position something which is you can talk about, something that you can tell the panel that this is your hobby. Besides the work that you do, this is what takes your spare time. This is what you get occupied in your spare time and you like to spend on. However, a word of caution here. When you mention your hobbies, then be very clear that you have ample amount of information about the hobbies to talk about. Because we don't want you to cut a sorry figure by saying that my hobby is reading, and then a panelist asks you, what do you read? Sir, I read many kind of books. That doesn't really answer the question. He really wants to know what kind of books you read. What fascinates you? Is it literature? Is it art? Is it history? Is it geography? Or is it fiction? Whatever it is. Then from there, he would like to narrow on to understand who is your favorite author. So you could ramble about 3 or 4 authors and then talk about why is he your favorite author? And then what are the traits that you like in his expression of the language that he uses? The point that we're trying to make here, friends, is that a hobby must be well qualified. A hobby must be well understood, and the dimensions of that hobby must be clearly understood. Don't put hobby just for the sake of putting a hobby, because you may cut a sorry figure after that. I remember in one of the panel sessions that you were doing a month back, one of the candidates wrote that, my hobby is talking to my elder brother. So, that kind of thing can be a deterrent here. Talking to your elder brother, you would do it on a daily and regular basis. But what is it that you gain from there? So ultimately, what we're really looking at is you words your, hobbies in the right manner. Be very clear about what you're writing there. Qualify yourself with the information that you have about the hobby and know in and out about that hobby that you talk about. Anything that you fill up in your DF2, friends, remember, it's got to be point-wise, it's got to be specific, and not be very lengthy and tardy. Because the moment you go into describing it in many words, then you're tying yourself into a bit of a knot. So be very clear, be point-wise, be specific, take up 1 or 2 hobbies, not more. And also remember to answer questions which ask you, what has been your takeaway from the hobbies? How has it added on to your dimension? How has it added to your repertoire? So those are the things you should be able to capture very quickly and be able to answer the panel saying how this hobby of reading or how this hobby of collecting stamps or how it's about gardening in the backyard of your house has helped you. So be prepared for the questions that are going to stem from the hobby that you're going to mention there. So these are certain things that have come to my mind, which I thought I'd share with you, because hobbies is one of the important points that get discussed in the panel interviews for your final interview.
Thank you, Baljit. That was very illuminating. Now, friends are talking about hobbies and interests. Why you are required to have hobbies and interests? Because UPSC wants to know that how did you spend your time outside of your school and your college and your universities and your studies? It's just not enough for UPSC to judge you as a good civil servant if you say, sir, I have no hobbies. So naturally the assumption is that you are wasting your time in the evening. And therefore, it is very important to have hobbies and interests. Now, taking off from where what Baljit has said, what is a hobby and what is an interest? Hobby is something which you pursue quite determinedly. For example, I may be an actor, I may be a cricketer, I may be a sports person, I may be a debater. Any kind of thing which you do persistently becomes a hobby and you excel at it. So if somebody asks me what were my hobbies in school and college, I would say I was a cricketer, I was a swimmer, and I was a debater. These were my 3 fortes during the school and college days when I was doing studies. And so naturally I was spending a lot of time, but I was also playing table tennis. But table tennis does not become my hobby, it becomes my interest. So hobbies is something which you go deep into, interest is something which you take lightly. So you may be interested, let us say, in fiction reading, but it may not be a hobby. So the emphasis from the panel would be less on your fiction reading and more on your actual hobbies, which you have mentioned in the DAF. So therefore, there's a difference between hobbies and interests. And as Baljit says, be careful what you fill, because it has happened in the past and it is going to happen to you also, and it may happen to you also, that the panel may ask you 80% of your questions on your hobbies. For example, last year, there was a student of ours whose hobby was watching football. He had no other hobby but watching. He never played football. For example, I also don't play football, but I watch World Cup matches and other matches. But he said, sir, I watch almost every kind of football matches, league matches, World Cup matches, Europa Cup matches, all kinds of matches, and all over the country, all over the world. And therefore, as predicted by Santosh and I, his interview was 80% on his simple hobby of watching football. But he was well ready for it. He was prepared for it. And he got more than 180 marks in his interview, only because he had focused on his hobby and had mastered. For example, football is, what is the name of the leagues in Spain, in Italy, in Portugal, in England, in South America, and what are the kind of tournaments which are being held. He knew all about that. And which player played left wing, which player played right wing, he knew about that. And therefore, his entire interview was focused only on his one single hobby of watching football on TV. He had never played football, but he had immense knowledge. And then you can also write, I read fiction. For example, if you write fiction, then you can say, sir, I read, let us say, for Frederick Forsyth or John Grisham, like that. And but then you should know the names of the books you have read and their style of writing and what are they trying to convey. All that has to be known. And as Baljit says, don't write frivolous things like talking to my brother, cooking for home. Those things will not get you any extra marks, and the questions will be very timid questions. And you are drawing attention to yourself unnecessarily to questions which you cannot answer. The aim should be that, let us say, if you say, like last year, there was a girl who said, sir, my hobby is my rooftop farming. Then we asked her, okay, what are the rooftop farming and what you know about it? She knew everything. She knew everything from fertilizers to soil to seeds to plants to seasons, and what she does and how what happens to the fruits which if any they come, and the flowers which she gets. And she was ready with the answers. Absolutely. Therefore, her hobby paid off and she made it to the civil service. Same with that boy who said, my hobby is watching football. And he made it to the civil services also. So hobby can take a lot of your time in the interview. And if you can impress the panel with just a few answers, then rest of the thing becomes very easy. And we had a number 7 2 years ago. Praveen Kumar was number 7. He came for mock interview with us and mentoring with us. And we told him what to answer and how to answer. And his rank was 7th. He was 7th in the list 2 years ago. And therefore, he was also again on hobby business. Hobbies. And because they want to know that will you be a full civil servant or not? Do you have an all-round personality or not? And that is what Baljit sir would like to speak a little bit on. What is a full-rounded personality which you can develop even now? So therefore, maybe a few words from Baljit.
Sure. So I just want to reiterate what Subhash sir said a little while ago, that just imagine your whole interview, 80% of that interview is based on what your hobbies are. And the advantage here is if you've done your homework and you're well aware about your hobbies, you can focus the discussion of the panel towards your hobby. How smartly you play that move is up to you, but it will all depend upon the length and breadth of the hobby interest that you have. Let's for an example take, say you say my hobby is gardening. Now the panel takes off. So what is it? How much time do you really spend on gardening? Where do you do your gardening? Do you have a kitchen garden? If you have a kitchen garden, what do you grow? If you grow, do you need it only for your household or you sell it outside? So, things of those kinds. If you're growing flowers, what are the kind of flowers that you grow? What are the seasonal flowers? What grows in winter? What grows in summer? How do you look after those flowers? Do you sell it to a bouquet seller or do you just keep those flowers for God's worship or what it is? So the point that we're trying to make is the more information that you have about your hobby, it gives you that kind of confidence to speak about that particular hobby. The other thing that we must remember is that the panel really looks forward to, as Subhash rightly says, that how much of that hobby has played off on you in a manner which has made you a more complete person. It is not just the bookish knowledge. It is not just clearing the mains. It is not just clearing your examination. That has got you to this stage. Now what they're looking forward to is the overall personality. How is this personality going to take off and take on very responsible positions in the civil services, which is the IAS and the IPS? Is this person worth investing for? Is this person really the right kind of a person that we can throw for the challenge of managing the Indian democracy to greater levels? So they are very keenly looking forward to your interest levels. Are you just focused on your books, clearing your examinations, getting high marks in them, and then just qualifying? Or are you more of a rounded personality? For being a rounded personality, always remember the other thing that they'll be looking at is what is your takeaway from the hobby? How has that hobby helped you to become a more complete person? Even aspects like, do you like to pursue your hobby individually, or do you like to do it in the company of 4 or 5 other friends? And when you do it in the company of 4 or 5 other friends, then are you a team player or are you emerging as a leader in certain occasions? So once again, the panel would like to question you, how would you position yourself as a leader? Or if you're a team member, somebody else is leading you, how will you function in looking at the overall perspective of achieving that goal? So, automatically you don't realize that, but panel has got umpteen years of service and experience behind them. They are instantly catching on to every sentence that you're making there. Every input that you're giving to the panel is opening up a Pandora's box. So be very careful about what you say. Be very careful about what you inform and share with them, because let's not fall into a pitfall where we get grilled into information which are not very comfortable and confident. Never be in the position of bragging about what you've done and what you've done. It doesn't really help. Say it in a plain, simple, fact manner and let the panel take it on from there. And like I said, I'm aware of a number of examples, not only in the civil services also, but in the defense services, where people have played up their hobbies to such an extent that panelists got hooked on to what they are saying. And they just keep asking more and more questions of that. Remember, the panel's got about 30 to 40 minutes to spend with you. Now, if you've been able to engage the panel in about 20 to 25 minutes in your hobbies, you won the show, right? So remember that what you position your DAF to is absolutely backed up with the right data, with the right information. You have the fingers on your fingertips. You have the data to explain that and be ready to face any questions relating to your hobby. I remember that Subhash sir and me are from the same school. He's my senior by about 4 years in the school. And I remember in our school, one of the most interesting hobbies that students used to follow was debating and elocution contest. And all of us really got focused into that and really helped us in our own careers. He rose on to become a high position in the civil service, and similarly, I rose up to become in the defense service. What really helped us was our ability to communicate and communicate effectively. So that is another thing that you need to keep in mind while facing the panel later. Subhash sir, back to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Baljit. We'll take up your each individual's hobbies if you have any issues on them. But let me focus on the, yes, Santosh, you have something to say.
Sir, yes, one more thing I would like to add. As Subhash sir has mentioned, Many of the candidates, some like they write hobbies like observing others. Like, I don't think those kinds, observing my family members, observing, talking to someone. So those kinds of frivolous hobbies, please don't write. Okay, Subhas sir has mentioned this. I wanted to reiterate this point. Be very
Okay.
careful and don't write hobbies to show off. As Baljit sir has said, that the hobbies are there to test your personality, what you have become because of the hobbies. So just writing something or telling to the panel that I have this hobby, but if it has not transformed you as a person, then that hobby is of no use. So just don't write for the sake of writing.
Okay, thank you, Santosh. Now let's